Thanks for joining today. Today we're going to run through the Oracle Primavera Cloud. If you hear us call it Prime, that's because that's what it used to be called. And it's not P6, it's a cloud-oriented tool purely, and it has scheduling capability in it. So what we're going to do is run through that to give you an overview, give you some different options as to what tool might make good sense for your team. So I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald, and I'm joining you today actually from Montreal. Doing the heavy lifting and demoing the software tool will be our implementation specialist, Marilyn Backstrom. She's coming to us from Edmonton. So let's touch on why. Why would you use the Oracle Primavera Cloud versus P6? What are some of the differences? What are some of the common struggles? So the one key difference with this tool is it's got a slightly different, it's got a completely different look and feel unless you've experienced P6 Web, which is P6, but the web piece, or sometimes we call it EPPM. This tool is 100% deployed only in the cloud, okay? So if that's the kind of environment your IT team wants, this could be a good option. The things that it can solve, okay? You can still do multiple projects, just like we can do in P6, okay? So we've got both options. Now this tool also has some portfolio graphics, dashboarding. So it's also multi-user. And the idea is you can share this data sometimes a little more readily with the portfolio piece. Now, because it's scheduling plus some other project communication, you're going to see some differences there, okay? And Marilyn will touch on them. And one of the key things that it allows us to do, it gives us a little stronger focus on steps, or what some people might call work phase planning or lean scheduling. So the communication, if you need to get more granular than what we have in P6, then this could be an interesting tool for you, okay? So she's going to show you some of that, and you can get a feel for that. So if you've had a chance to use steps in P6, this exposes the steps better. So steps are a bit hard to work with, not because they're difficult to work with, but because you can't show them very easily in a Gantt chart. So she'll touch on how this could up your communication capability and some of your detailed site management capability. You could use it for work package planning details and have your lead engineer check off the work. Okay, so there's slightly different capabilities here, and it could be interesting for your particular needs. Now, what this gives you is the ability to dig a little deeper into some of the requirements that you might have. That you might have said, well, I can't manage all this detail, so I'm not going to put it in my schedule. So you end up with longer, higher level activities that sometimes are hard to manage, hard to update, and don't really get the details of who's supposed to be doing things. So as Marilyn touches on some of these lean scheduling capabilities in the tool, you'll see whether or not, some of this could make sense for your team. Now, if you're starting from scratch, let's say you don't have P6, you don't have any scheduling, maybe your team is using Excel, Microsoft Project, or some variety of things, this could be an interesting place to start. The price point is cheaper than P6. So this could be an option for your team if they're feeling that the price is too high for P6, or they have many users that might need a more lightweight tool. Okay, so those are some of the different things to look at that the Oracle Cloud could help you with. Okay, if I keep wanting to call it Prime, so forgive me. So those are some of the benefits. Now, let me just give you a quick overview of how it works, and then Marilyn will show you the tool in action. So we have different pieces to what we've got in the cloud tool. So we've got planning and scheduling, portfolios. So you can have multiple projects. You can organize them in portfolios. You have the ability to do some scenario work, and you've got resourcing. Okay, so that part's very similar to P6. The OPC is also got the web-based component, as I mentioned. So it's going to be very similar. You're going to feel that it's very similar to P6 Web if you've worked in that. And the focus of some of what we're going to show you today is going to be on the lean scheduling. So she's going to show you that. And it really gives a single platform for that dashboard, digital planning board capability in one place. So it's quite nice and easy to work with. So like we would typically do, we define our phases, our breakdowns, we've got activities, we've got the ability to see who was the last planner and monitor performance, okay? And the level of detail you want to go to, again, will be up to you how you want to tackle this. So most of us, if we're using P6, we've got to dig into a high level of granularity in the activities because it's not easy to expose the steps. This gives you a different flavor, different option, especially as an owner. You may choose just to go to a level 3 in terms of the activities and do the heavy lifting of level 4, level 5 detail, so more detail in the lean scheduling components. So that brings a different potential aspect that might make sense for your team. And really how you use the lean scheduling pieces. They could be task lists, they could be a work plan, they could be handoffs at the job site, okay? And this gives you some different capabilities of analysis as well. So that will be the focus for the tool and what we're going to dive deeper into. And Marilyn's going to do that for us. Okay, I'll hand it over to Marilyn. Did I miss anything that I should have highlighted?
I don't think so. That's pretty much what's in the presentation, so I think we're good.
Okay, awesome. I'll switch it on over to you. Coming your way.
Okay. Whoops, just one second. I just need to share my screen and we'll get going here.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, we should have a schedule on the screen right now. Just checking, sorry. I have multiple screens, so I'm always letting people know what they should be looking at because sometimes there's a little disconnect.
Looks
so
good.
what we're looking at here, Nicole was speaking about what you usually have if you're a P6 user. Well, this area would cover off basically what you would see in your P6 schedule. Now, if you have information, whether you were using P6 and you're going to OPC, or if you're getting information from a subcontractor, you can import XML and XERs right into OPC. Now, we've got our schedule here. Basically, in the schedule piece, you're bringing in the same information that you have in P6 client, for example. But it's got a few more pieces to it because you'll see down the left side here, we have a number of modules. So if I look at the left side, of course, you got home at the top, but if I come down a little farther, we'll have a quick look at some of the scope items, some of the task items, and this is our schedule module. So you can actually grant users access to the specific modules that they require when you're talking from a security perspective. But also, what you want to be aware of here, we've got a schedule module. So I'm in the activities piece. It's showing me the schedule that I've put in here. Now, when I look at the activities, I can create layouts. This file, by the way, does have a baseline. I've got another layout here that I could enable, which will show the project with baseline. You can schedule, you can level, you've got resources attached, so you can look at resource profiles. From that perspective, you've got the information from P6 client. However, you've got places where you can build more. And I'm not suggesting that you would necessarily be importing a schedule and then building back out the rest of it. If you're going to build your schedule in here, let's go up to the scope module. So we can actually put into OPC the scope items that we require in order to complete the work that we need in this particular schedule. So if I opened up, for example, mechanical window, you can go in, and before everybody gets really afraid of, wow, that's a lot of data entry, there is load sheets available where you can put different pieces of information into OPC using loader sheets, import sheets. So it is a template. You do have to adhere to their configuration, but not everything in OPC necessarily has to be data entry type of scenario. That's why I was mentioning you can import XMLs and XCRs if you need to. So if I put the scope items in here, so I've got the scope items I need to cover in my schedule. So now if I look in the scope module, I can also register work packages. So I've got work packages. And how many times have you had to, well, maybe not struggle with, but had to handle a fairly large spreadsheet because you're tracking work packages, the status of them, where are they at, what are we waiting for on this package or that package, whatever the case is. Well, you can definitely track the work packages inside the software. So I've got the scope items, I've got the work packages I need to complete those particular scope items. And if I just bring this bottom part up here, you'll see I've got some details for each one. So there is detail items that you can track on each work package as you're going along in the planning process. Now, when I've got my scope items and then I've got my work packages, if I go back to the scope module, I've got scope assignments. So you need to connect the two. And that's exactly what this is doing. So I've got the work package, open, remove, manways, scope item, and then even shows you the activity because this has all been created and connected. It shows the activity in this case, and there could be multiples on these. This is just a small demo. So you've got scope items, work packages, and the scope assignments shows you how those are all connected up. So again, you've got another element where you can very easily check and see, do I have something in there that is not connected properly? So in the reporting, everything is going to show up where it's supposed to show up. So if I go in and I look, I've got the PBS breakdown, which is a coding structure. I've got the WBS breakdown. I won't spend a lot of time in there, but I just want you to know you do have a PBS breakdown. You do have access to the WBS both here and in the activities module. So depending who you've given access to, you don't necessarily have to fret over. They don't need access to the scheduling module, but they need access to the WBS, that kind of scenario. Now, once you've got your schedule created and optimized, of course, same as in P6, you create baselines. So this particular file already has a baseline created. So you've got another piece there for scope, which is a little different take on how would you actually set up your schedule, because you don't have to work from I've got the schedule built and then create spreadsheets or anything like that to track these elements. You can start with the scope items before you have your schedule, of course, then go through your work packages, your scope assignments, and you're working from the pieces you need to cover off the work to get to where the activities in your schedule are going to be. So if I go in from there, I've got activities we were looking at, but I've got another module here that is tasks. Now, this is where your lean scheduling piece is going to sit. And I find this module fairly interesting, actually, because it does cover some of the things that I've seen in the field people struggle with. So if I go to tasks and I go to the work plan, so again, because we've only got the small time frame, I'll show you how you create another task for the work planning board if you need to, but there is some interesting functionality in here that you may find does help with managing your projects, because as Nicole was saying, you've usually got your schedule, and then you need to coordinate that with the people in the field. Well, just because I've got an activity in my schedule that, for example, I've got one here that says install scaffolding, but you'll notice I've got 2 tasks under it. Well, the reason I've got 2 tasks there is 2 different areas involved in that install scaffolding activity, and they're being handled by 2 different companies. And that's why these 2 tasks are different colors. That's an automatic option that you can just enable or disable in the software, and it gives you lots of visualization as to who are my contractors, because after you look at this just a little bit, it's not going to take long before you know, okay, the orange is this particular contractor, the red is somebody else, that kind of thing. But you also have, if we're looking at the task, I always end up calling this the task board, because the way I've ever dealt with the work plan, you use the task board to create the work plan. So if you hear me calling it the task board, that's what I'm referring to. It's just habit. Excuse me. So let's look at what we've got in here. So if you're doing lean planning, you can give access to this work plan board to the people who are carrying out the work. Now, whether they do it remotely or whether they are actually all gathered at a point on site, it'll handle it either way. But you've got certain activities. Now I've got tasks underneath them. So if I look at one of these tasks, let's just go to this install scaffolding one. If I double click, there's quite a bit of information in here. Task name, start date, and the date it was completed. Now this checkbox at the bottom, even without opening this up, gives me a visual to say these 2 activities are already completed. Now, if I want to see exactly how this progresses out, I can double click on one. I'll go to one that isn't complete. Doesn't really matter which one we take. I'll take the found work, the weld repair. So if I double click here, the first screen that opens, I've got a duration, I've got a due date, I've got the company looking after the task work. And as I mentioned, there is a lot of times when you've got an activity that goes to the field and you might think, okay, I'm tracking this one activity. Well, at site, they may not be tracking one activity. They may be looking at it not only as 2, they might have 3 or 4 tasks, because it might be something that they require their own resources and a couple subcontractors to finish it. So if we look at this, this is A1 welding. I've got the task name, start date, completed date. Now, this in itself, you've got icons at the bottom. If you hover over them, they'll let you know what the icon is all about. But there's more information you want to be aware of here, because it's very handy. So if I click this little icon beside the X, my weld repair task. So I've got task name, the company again, if you are assigning a user, which you can for reporting purposes, that kind of thing. Now, if I scroll down this general tab, there's something handy to know about here. Each one of these tasks can have a proposed due date. Now, the idea is you get the subcontractors or whoever owns that task to commit to that date, and you can track the commitments. So that really does make it easier than going to spreadsheets and phoning people, things like that, and doing updates. So if I go to additional fields, this is coding, but if I go to commitments, you'll see it's already telling me this task has a proposed due date of the 3rd of July. Now, if it's missed, this is where the people you give access to this module to can go in and put information. So reasons missed. So you can customize a list. I'll just click this. There is some in here, but you can customize that list. And you can put comments. And then you can recommit to whatever date they say now it will be completed. So these tasks hold a lot of information. Now, if you've got handoffs happening, you can register handoffs in here, and you can also put constraints. This particular one doesn't have one, but I do have some constraints in this particular schedule. So all of that information can go into that dialog box. Now, when you're holding your meeting, or maybe your process is you're having each lead for the companies that own these tasks do their own updates. Well, you can go in and, for example, if I was going to tell the software that weld repair is finished, all I really need to do, whoops, is go in, and if it's going to give me an error there, there's another way to go through it. I can just go in here and I can say completed date. And this is telling me the commit is pending. That's what the problem is. So that's easy enough to fix. I just have to go in here, and what it's looking for is a recommit because this date is old. That's why. So you can see where it's going to actually warn people about a lot of different things. So you can put progress in here. Now, if your progress is telling you, oops, this activity, for example, shutdown of the 2 OTSGs was supposed to be only 3 days, but look at this. It's going to be 4 days. So maybe there's a day in here that for some reason there's no work going on. Maybe there's actually another task that needs to happen in here, in which case I could just come over to the side and create a new task. And that's what it will let you do. It's that easy to create a task. And then what you can do is you can just drag that task over and put it down. So you wouldn't want to fill in all the information, but if you need a new task there, it's not difficult to do. Now you'll notice that on the activity, because this activity is now past what the original end date of the activity in the schedule is, you can see I've got dashed lines here. So it will allow people doing updates to move it out, but it shows them graphically, okay, you're missing the end date of what this activity was supposed to be. Now, you might be wondering, well, what happens if people who are using this information really don't want to see those tasks from the schedule? That's what this list at the side is all about. Well, you've got the option to show them or not to show them. So if I go to these 2 radio buttons, I can take off the activities, just show the tasks, or put the activities back. Personally, I like the reference back to the activities myself, but I know some people who don't care for that. So if we go in and we are updating activities, we can do the updates in this particular screen. You can have meetings. You've got a very graphic item to look at. What is your progress? You can get into discussions. Okay, do we actually have to move this out a day? Or is there something we can do about this task here? Maybe it can be done in parallel with the second task that's on that activity. Those kinds of things, because it is very visual. But this information doesn't actually just hover in this particular tab and stay there. And we'll have a look when we go back to the project, and we'll show you where it is going to show what is being shown in the work plan on the schedule. So when you do your updates, If you need to ask questions, you can ask questions. If you look at it and you say, yeah, well, that's the last update that I heard, so yeah, I think that is good, we can put it into our schedule. So it does automatically share the information without automatically putting it into your schedule. So if there is something in there that you want to ask questions on, you're thinking, no, that shouldn't be the way it is, it's not going to be a problem. So when we are looking at the work plan, if I go down, I've got another element here, handoffs. So these tasks that we're building in the work plan, you can connect pieces. So you can show handoffs. Now, where this comes in really handy, I've got one down at the bottom here. This is one contractor. This is another contractor. In this particular section, they can very clearly see a connection between the two. So you may not have one that is finished to finish, but you may have one that's finished to start, that kind of thing. Colors make it very visual to see it's two contractors. Whatever the connection is, you absolutely cannot miss the fact that it's showing you if one task gets delayed, you're impacting the next task, and it's another contractor. It's not your own people. So you need to have some conversations around that as well. Now, if I want to look at the information here, I can double click and get to that same dialog box that we were in when we were in the work plan. Now, there's another place you can go in, and I know some people that like to do their updates in the work plan, but you don't have to. So if I go down to the task list, and this is all contained in that same module, if I go down to the task list, I can very easily do updates in here, because here is my tasks. And if I want to look at the information on them, I can definitely go in and do that. If, for example, if I just randomly click on one, I can see details in the bottom. So it's very easy to see what's going on. Commitments, if I have commitments on it, which when you're going through and putting the progress in there, you're going to have different commitments. You might only have one, you might have multiples, but you can see details in the bottom. You can also see details in this state column. So the same thing you saw in the task when it was in the work plan, you've got that same information here. So what happens if I want to go in and finish some tasks? All I have to do is click on this completed column. It's that easy. That's all you have to do. Then exactly what you're seeing here for the install scaffolding, this checkbox is going to turn the dark green. That task is completed. That is really all you need to do when you're saying, okay, this task is finished, this task is finished, this task is finished. And keep in mind, you can start a task and say it's incomplete, but for a lot of them, because the tasks are usually fairly short duration, you are going to be just completing them. They're going to start and finish when the task dates say they are, and that's going to be it. That's all you have to update. Now, if we put constraints in our schedule, you can list them, of course, so that you can go in and see the information. We don't have a lot of them. I've got one so far in here. So you've got very easy information here to look and see what your constraints were, what's happened on that. And when I go in, I can analyze what's going on in my tasks. So one of the places I can go is in the analysis, and there, if I go back to the work plan for a second, and my apologies, I should have shown you that when I was in there. But if I go to the work plan, you might be looking at this thinking, wow, I don't want to go through all these icons to find out what the status is. You don't have to. So if I go up to this little symbol here and I look for the task summary, you can see it's showing me overdue. And don't forget this because it's a little demo file. Of course, the dates aren't up to date, but you get overdue, tasks with Slack, commitments, pending, unassigned, all that kind of information. Now, if I look at, and this is the one, It's telling me planned outside activity dates. That's the one that's going a day late. If I was to look at just the report, I can click on the element and I'm right there. It's going to take me right to it. Now, by that same token, I can look at a slightly different analysis of what's going on in my tasks by clicking on the analyze. Now, for this particular one, if I go and it's just defaulting to a time frame that didn't have anything in it. And again, if you're watching a schedule that's being updated each week, it's that defaulting to that would not cause you any problem. So you've got project plan % complete, you've got company planned % complete, and you've got reasons for missed commitments, 3 of the top ones that are here. So, and I can go down. This is a very small file, so it's not a real busy analysis, but you can see that it is tracking the tasks for you. So it makes it very easy to go back and find out exactly what's going on. So we've gone in and we've looked at our work plan. We could go in and do updates in the work plan. We can go in and we can do updates in the task list. Now, once we've got information for where we feel that those tasks are going to be executed, and usually your meeting on this, depending on the project, it might be weekly, it might be daily, it might be morning and evening. It depends on what you're doing. But if you go in and you're looking at the information, you've done your updates in here, how am I going to see that in my schedule? So we need to go from the field level into the schedule itself, that is the one that management is issuing reports off of, more reports, because you can't issue the other reports off the work plan. So if we go in and look at our activities, the information that is in our tasks is going to show up in our activities as well. So I'm just going to double click here so we can see our Gantt bars. And again, you can create whatever layout you need to in there. So when we're looking at our updates, and we have a few updates in here, not a lot, we're just getting started. So if we look at install scaffolding, for example, if I go to the details in the bottom here, I've got activity details, general status, all the good information that you had in your schedule in web or in P6, if that's the tool that you were using, but you've got tasks. And these tasks, if I hover over this icon, review the task detail window for additional task status details. So I've got 2 tasks here that are completed. They were completed the 3rd of July. So that information is there. But one thing you'll notice, if I go to the status tab, there's no actual start, actual finish on there yet. So that's what I wanted everybody to realize. It's not going to be a case of the work plan in the field being planned and then being updated and then automatically putting some dates into your schedule, and you may look at that and go, no, this is not what I want. This is not going to do me any good kind of scenario, and have to go and take it all out, because it's not going to do that for you. You need to go in, and if you're okay with the 3rd of July, then I can just make this actual start, actual finish, carry on to my next activity. Now, if I was looking at my, my mouse gets a little carried away and wants to touch a little too many things. It's a brand new one. I should have stayed with the old one. So if I look at my shutdown to OTSGs, now if I look at these tasks, you'll notice I've got more state icons in here. I've got 1 task completed and I've got 3 pending. So the one that was completed was committed for the 5th of July. So you can see all the information here. So if the information you have in here gives you some information that you want to incorporate in your status tab, you can definitely do that. But if you need to talk to somebody about this because something just doesn't look right, again, you don't have to worry about it coming into your schedule.
So, Marilyn, would it be fair to say you could give the tasks to the guys in the field or your engineering lead or a procurement lead, perhaps? They do their work in there, and then you as the scheduler can validate it and then do the updates for the project controls team. Is that the
Definitely,
right way
that
to
it
look
does.
at it?
It does allow you to do it because I can go into whether you want the work plan or the task list, it doesn't matter, but you can assign those, excuse me, assign those to you can see assigned user. So if it's field people, engineering people, whatever, and they can do their updates in there. You can see what their updates are here and you decide, okay, does that actually go as an update on that activity or not?
Okay. Okay, good. So that gives control, security, and allows the right people to be touching the detail, right?
Well, there's from a scheduling perspective, I think it's a good idea because as the owner of a progress schedule, you don't want information just kind of appearing in there and then you have to really delve into the weeds to figure out, okay, where did this come from? Why was it put in? And how am I going to get it out of here? Because it shouldn't be there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's exactly what happens. You're going, okay, this shouldn't be here. So I need to get
Yeah.
it out, but I also need to know where did it come from and why. So, and that's where not only are you getting the information from the work plan, in other words, the task, but Nicole mentioned as well communication. So you'll notice that I've created a layout here that's got these little communication bubbles, is what I call them. There's probably another, it's discussion boxes. So if there was something I needed to ask about, I mean, you can definitely pick up a phone and ask people, but if I click that box, I get the discussion panel. So I can post a comment and then you can get responses there. And you'll notice that if I close that, if I go down to the tasks, there's another little discussion element in here as well. So if I went in here, maybe I look at this new task and somebody forgot to put the information in it. And I'm thinking, okay, does that new task really need to be there? I can again click, discuss the new task, post a comment to whoever that needs to go to, and find out if you want to do your communication that way. Or, I mean, you can pick up a phone and talk to somebody as well. But if you've put it in here, it is part of the reference for your file. So that piece is going to stay with the information in your file, which is always a good thing as well. So if we go in and we have a look, we've updated our install scaffolding. Now we have found work as well. That was one of the ones we were looking at on the task board. So this found work, we've got weld damage. Well, you noticed on the task board, we've got two tasks. We needed it welded and then we need inspection on it because it can't be installed until it's inspected. Well, I've got two activities here that are pending. They were not completed. Now, I've got a few choices here. How am I going to treat this update? One of the things I can do, I can message. So I can go into this discussion box and I can message in there. Or maybe you're more comfortable going back to the tasks module to have a look at this activity and what's going on around it. So if you've got access to all three of these, you can definitely go back and forth to pick up the pieces of information that you're looking for. But if you're dealing just with the schedule and you're just reading the task information that you get in off the work plan, you can still address if there is questions here. My question here would be, okay, I don't have commitments? Is that the issue? Something is behind. What's going on? Because these should have actually started. So you've got a lot of different ways to go about getting updates in here. Now, also, there's the other flip side too, just a little bit of food for thought. If I came into this activity, I see 2 tasks that are pending. So I know, okay, the field is telling me these 2 are not finished. Do I have extra information that's telling me that something didn't get updated here? If that's so, I have the opportunity to send a message and, for example, simply say, per the meeting that was this morning at 8 a.m., I'm posting this activity complete because it was stated it was complete in the meeting, that kind of thing. That's going to give people who own those tasks a heads up something got missed. So you've got a few different options in there. Now, you'll notice that for tracking purposes, you've got a few other pieces in here as well, because you can see I've got flags in here. So I can flag tasks and pull the flagged items to a report. And you'll notice we looked at the report. We had, this is a schedule health score. So this, just a heads up, that icon, when you go from the work plan to the schedule, although that icon looks exactly the same, it doesn't do the same thing. Now, my apologies, I'm looking at the time here, talking too much, but there is another element I want you to be aware of. We've looked at the schedule. We've looked at, okay, how can I look at my work plan and people can do the updates. I can see those updates in the schedule. Now, I can put them in the schedule or choose not to, excuse me. But also, don't forget, we've got the scheduling. Sorry. We've got scheduling and leveling that happens in this section as well. Well, that functionality is available. Tools in the actions, you can schedule, you can level. So you've got very similar functionality for the resources as you have, for example, in P6, Microsoft Project, that kind of thing. And we can also, we've got activity details at the bottom. Now, we can look at project usage across the bottom. That's one of the places that I can look at activity usage, but I can look at resource usage as well. So depending on what I'm looking for in the resource usage here, and it's because I don't have this quite pulled in, but I need to check them so it's not a little upset with me for not telling me which one, but I need to pull it in on my screen so I can see it as well. So you can do things like stacked histograms, same as you can in P6. So that piece of it is there as well. Now you'll notice there is another element that we have in the schedule piece. This is another way of looking at your resources. So you've got an assignment list. So I can create my time frame and I can choose what I want to look at. In this case, this particular one is set up planned units remaining early, timesheet actual units. And we don't have timesheets on here, but you can see you can actually pull that in. So depending on how you handle your resourcing, some of that functionality may be handy for you. Now, if I go back to my schedule, and this is all in the schedule module, there's another one I just want you to be aware of because you may find it handy, is schedule comparison. So we haven't looked at comparing different updates. I just wanted to give you a feel for how you can do the updates in OPC. But when you do your updates, you can actually create or grab similar to what you would have as a snapshot. and you can compare. So it gives you the ability to compare. In this case, what I'm comparing to is the progress and the baseline, which definitely that's useful, but you can pick other files as well in here, and it gives you the ability to look at it. And I've got change type. You'll notice edited and there's added here. So there's an activity that was added and that was found work after the baseline was created. So you can generate that kind of comparison as well. There's a lot of different configuration depending on how you actually want to look at it. But I just wanted to, before we wrap it up, touch on that piece, because this is something that sometimes people struggle with a little bit. So they have something in here to try and help cover off those particular pieces a little bit. So depending on how many different comparison files you have available, and of course it's comparing the same file because it runs along the same lines as P6 client. If you're comparing two files, it's going back to the activity ID. So that's what it's using to say, okay, which two pieces do I compare? And of course, we've got baselines as well. You saw the baselines in the other module. It's very much the same thing that you're looking at here. So I've got current baseline, and there was another demo baseline that I created. Now, whether you're comparing the baselines or whether you've got copies that you've got after each weekly update or each monthly update, you do have the ability to do some comparison on the schedules. So I hope that's given you kind of a little bit of a flavor for some of the ways that you can use this information. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we've got the scope module, we've got the tasks module, and this is where your lean scheduling, as we saw, comes from. And you've got the schedule module. And I did say you can of course create the same kinds of layouts so that you can put baselines in there as well, like I just pulled up on the screen. So the actual scheduling functionality is similar to what is in client. You're not missing the scheduling, you're not missing the leveling, you're not missing being able to look at resources. Shows it in a little different fashion, but the information is there. So I will pass it back across to Nicole.
All righty. Thank you, Mary Lynn. Let me grab it back. Okay, so thanks for showing us the way that the tool works. The focus was mostly on the lean scheduling component, but Mary Lynn was able to touch on a few of the other aspects. So tool has very good functionality, has different layers. Again, depending on what your team's looking for, that might look like a better fit for P6, or you can also use it in conjunction. Okay, so that's another benefit, is you can actually get the schedules from your engineering firms, your construction companies, upload them, and then you can share in a more collaborative manner the tool within the OPC environment. Okay, so there's definitely different strategies that you can take depending on how you want to roll it out. So hopefully you saw, the interesting aspects of different levels of collaboration. That's always a challenge. Who should be doing the scheduling? Who should be doing the updating? How much level of detail should we have in? The platform is quite easy to use. So it's not a huge lift of training. There are some concepts that people need to understand, but in terms of working in the system, it's quite simple. And you can see there's live dashboarding built into the tool. Okay, so that can be quite an interesting out of the box feature. And deploying it is simple because it's just in the Oracle Cloud. Okay, there's only one strategy there. So it could bring some different levels of visibility that you may be struggling with. You know, we've seen lots of clients with all sorts of different Excel spreadsheets, counting things and trying to roll up earned value and things like that. So the visibility comes along immediately in the OPC platform. And the what if scenario and the schedule comparison helps you to see the different kinds of trending that can be taking place. Okay, so those are important things for the team to have a good handle in. And then we didn't focus on this so much, but there is the capability to take that data and portfolio it. So you don't have to work just in one project. That was our example today. So we can do more on that in another session. And of course, you can do integrations to it just like you can in P6. Okay, so there are APIs or web service type components to allow you to plug that in. Okay. I didn't see any questions, so if you do have any questions, if you want to understand any layers of it more, go ahead and throw them in the question area and we'll tackle them. So hopefully you saw something that could be interesting to your team, things that you might want to explore. And if that's the case, that's what we're here for, okay? This is one of the tools that we work with on the Oracle side. Of course, we work with P6 and we work with Unifier, AConnects, the risk analysis, and we also work with Safran as well. Okay, so we've got a full spectrum of things that we do to help you guys run your projects better. We've got programmers on the team, and that's why we've got a lot of our own add-on tools. Okay, so those are things you can explore with us further. And our webinar schedule is a good place to go to try and understand what other things exist in our website. You can explore that under the tools section as well. Okay, well, I'll put Marilyn and Donna's contact up. If you do have any questions or you want to understand whether, you know, this tool would be a good fit for you or P6, if you're trying to understand that, reach out and we would be happy to help you run through why you might use one or the other. And their contact info is there. So I'll stop the recording.